super friends, and welcome back to another episode of Superhero Saturday, where we talk about the arts of superheroes, storytelling, and so much more. My name is Annie, and it's Christmas! Literally, this video is coming out on Christmas Day. That means all of your favorite stories are tackling the holiday season, whether they make sense or not. The holiday special is something that takes place in virtually every serial storytelling medium. So of course, you've seen these stories before. Santa makes a sudden, unexpected appearance. There's an after-school special format where we learn about the spirit of giving. There's a sudden and implausible mission to save Christmas, and we're the only ones who can. Yeah, I think we've heard this one before. And in the spirit of the holiday season, I'm throwing every single holiday special trope at you in one jam-packed video. Now, of course, these are only the ones that I can think of, the ones that I know and recognize, and not all of them apply to the superhero genre, but many of them actually fit perfectly well into them. Do you think you can name them all? Let's find out. Since there are so many different holiday tropes in use today, we're gonna split them into 5 different categories. The first of which is story universe deviations. This means that whatever's taking place in the normal course of the story universe of whatever story you're in really takes a big plot step outside of their comfort zone to get into the holiday spirit. Sometimes there's even just a one-off holiday special that doesn't fit at all into the continuity of the story that's at hand. If you're watching it in chronological order, you're like, wait, what? I thought that she doesn't get her powers until episode 7. What's she doing with them now? Although sometimes on rare occasions they will use this holiday special that jumps off of the main plot continuity to set up something for the new year and a new, second half of the season. One particular deviation from the traditional universe story is a trope that's called Merry Christmas in Gotham, which is totally fitting for the superhero trope. This is when a story that is usually pretty dark and moody and really along the lines of gritty and mysterious takes a moment off of all of those dark undertones for its theme to get a little bit lighter and focus on some of the good things that happen. This works really well with stories that, for example, the supervillains just take Christmas off just this once for a truce. On the other hand, sometimes you might have an action-packed Christmas special where everyone is on an all-out brawl because this is an action story and it just happens to also have Carol of the Bells playing in the background. Speaking of music, a lot of times what will be really out of universe is if an episode for some reason ends with all the characters coming together, holding hands, and singing a carol together, even though they probably would never do that in real life. Or, for example, talking the whole episode in rhyme or even iambic pentameter. You know the old stories, the ones that rhyme for no particular reason, and it just happens to be that it's the holiday season. I did that off the top of my head. I'm getting better at this. Another version of this is a trope that's been called Yet Another Christmas Carol Story. And this one probably is pretty obvious. What happens is the plot of the story takes the characters on a ride that's really familiar because it's basically ripped off from a previous very popular Christmas type story. They just kind of follow the steps and condense it and kind of shove it into the characters and the universe that's going on in this story right now. This is kind of the classic tale where it's not so subtle that we're ripping somebody else off. Oftentimes with the story, A Christmas Carol, where, the main character who's a little bit moody and upset about the holiday season for some reason gets visited by 3 spirits who remind him or her or them about how important it is to love your family and be happy and embrace the holiday spirit. And for some reason, because these stories are so iconic and foundational to our modern storytelling, it has become a trend to just kind of retell that story in different versions with different characters from different universes. And it can work, and it does work, and sometimes it just feels like we're telling the same story over and over again. Those are typically the ones that take a real kind of push outside of the story's typical, patterns to have a little bit of a holiday special that doesn't really fit in the rest of the universe, but it's Christmas, just do it anyway. The next character of holiday tropes that you might find in your superhero story is a bunch of stuff that's just Santa based. It's just kind of really popular for a holiday special to kind of take on this mystical figure of Santa Claus and either retrofit him into the universe or find a way to fit him in there, or just kind of go on a crazy wild hare to chase after him. Oftentimes this includes a Santa origin story of some kind, where the characters in the universe learn the truth about Santa in their universes. For example, if Santa is actually a superhero on his own, or an immortal figure that just keeps living, or maybe it's a title that gets passed down from generation to generation of superpowered humans. And of course, there's always the option that Santa is actually an alien. That's a fun one. Oftentimes in these kind of versions, it's easy to paint Santa as being a superhero, because obviously how else would he get around the world in one night to give presents to all the good little boys and girls and kids of the world? Like, obviously, you gotta be part Superman to do that, right? But there are other deviations to this. For example, what if Santa was actually a supervillain and he turned bad and is actually wreaking havoc on the world under the guise of being the good guy? This can kind of lead to a Santa conspiracy theory type thing, where maybe the characters don't know the truth about Santa, or they're just finding out that it's some kind of big plan to take over the world. And then there's a whole subcategory of this subcategory, which we are calling the Let's Save Christmas category, with it just includes a ton of Santa stuff in it. So let's dig in. For example, Santa has been kidnapped, or Santa has been replaced by an imposter, or Santa has fallen ill, or just has gotten out of the spirit of Christmas and doesn't want to do it anymore. Sometimes, as part of Santa's crew of people who make Christmas happen are taken out of the picture in some other manner. For example, if the elves go on strike, or if the reindeer go missing. Sometimes Santa even gets mistaken for a villain when he's not actually the villain stand-in, because obviously he's breaking into people's houses at night. So, for example, maybe some well-meaning but kind of slow adults see him and think, oh no, that's a burglar, and lock him up. But it's actually the real Santa, so we've got to get him back out so he can deliver the presents. Whatever the crisis, there has to be some way to save Christmas and ensure that the presents all get delivered around the world as usual. So that may involve the heroes of our story stepping in to save Santa in whatever way is necessary, or defeat the supervillain, or reactivate the belief-o-meter. Sometimes Santa himself may just need that little extra push to take back the sleigh himself, and we might find an accidental action Santa in which Santa looks nice and calm and jolly most of the time, but if you threaten his Christmas and his kids, he's gonna kick butt, and all of a sudden Santa's holding a bazooka. Like, what is going on here? Surprisingly a very popular trope. On the other hand, we may have to have a heroic stand-in for Santa. In other words, somebody else who's not normally Santa has to step up and take on the role to make sure that this holiday season goes off without a hitch. This can be the main character of the normal story teaming up with Santa for a big surprise, or even someone who didn't really expect to be there just stepping up. There's a whole lot of different options you can use based on the different format of your story. And a lot of these have to do with some kind of Christmas magic, whether that's like elven or fantastical, or just straight up mythical superpower goodness. Regardless, these characters in the story discover in some form or another that Santa Claus is real, whether that means they go up and visit the North Pole, or they happen upon him, or he calls on them for help. All sorts of ways to get Santa into your universe. But if in your universe it's still uncertain whether or not Santa is real, then you might fall into a trope that is not quite Santa, but just might be. This one's been called the personal Santa trope. So, for example, the characters go throughout their holiday season just doing their normal thing, but it happens to also be the holidays. Usually at the end of this type of episode, what will happen is a mysterious figure will appear who may or may not be old Saint Nick himself, who gives a little bit of extra generosity, makes a little bit of a magic happen, and just kind of fades off into the night, leaving you wonder, was that actually the big guy himself? Or was it just some random stranger who happened by? That one's actually, I think, a personal favorite of mine. Category is the not quite Christmas of the Christmas specials, and that's because they kind of tangentially relate to the holiday season, but not quite in the big, classic commercialized Santa Claus way. First off, this is anything that includes any kind of inclusive holiday, meaning something other than just Santa Claus Christmas, whether that means it's actual Christianity Christmas, Hanukkah, or even sometimes Kwanzaa. We also have what is called the Christmas-ish holiday, and this is actually pretty prevalent in superhero stories. This means that there's some kind of made-up holiday that fits into your universe a little bit better and is pretty closely related to Christmas, and it's kind of like a mimic holiday, but not quite. For example, if your character is an alien and on their homeworld they celebrate a festival of lights of some kind that just happens to take place in kind of the Earth solar month of December. That way these characters still kind of get to get into the holiday spirit with their fellow Earth friends, but they have their own little thing on their own to add a little bit of variety to their traditions. And then last but not least is the holiday special that kind of really doesn't make anything but a passing reference to the fact that the story is set during the Christmas season. You might see displays on the windows, you might see gift giving happen in the background, but really the bulk of the story just is continuing to plow through the holiday season. This is a little bit different than an episode, for example, that airs during the Christmas season, or maybe even really near or on Christmas, because if it just airs on Christmas, that doesn't mean it necessarily has to do with Christmas, which doesn't make it a holiday special episode. It just happens to be around at that time. For some reason, that doesn't happen very often, I think because it's such a great way to capitalize on all of these different tropes and things, and also to just kind of make that extra connection with the real world and give you something personal to connect with. Who doesn't want to see Superman in a Santa hat? I mean, come on, that's just cute. So there you have it. Those are all of the Christmas and holiday specials that I can think of and research off the top of my head. And before I end this video, I want to give you another reminder. Just because these plot devices constitute tropes, which simply means a recurring plot pattern that happens in a bunch of different places and is easily recognizable, doesn't mean that you can't use them in your own stories. Just because there's a Christmas special doesn't mean that it's automatically bad. If you use these tropes in a good way with good attention to detail and understanding of how it affects the characters in the story and changes things in a unique and really spirited, genuine way, it can work wonders. And on the other hand, if you're just pulling some cheap tricks to make something look cool and maybe sell some holiday toys, then yeah, that's not gonna go over too well with your audience. So that makes me a little bit curious. How do you guys feel about people using these plot devices in their stories? Do you like it or do you not like it? Are there some tropes that you absolutely love to see in any iteration, and are there some that you just would rather never happen again? Have you used any of these in your own stories, or do you have some favorite examples of your favorite stories and characters using these in a way that's really cool? Go ahead and pop those down in the comments below and we'll continue the conversation there. And that's my video for you guys today. I hope you have a Merry Christmas if you celebrate, and Happy Holidays regardless. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give us a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more superheroic content in the new year. You can join the team by following us on social media and by supporting us over on Patreon. And if you want to see my own superheroes in action, which thankfully have not had to experience any holiday special tropes on their own just yet, then you can go to our website at www.fearless9.com and check out some characters that may just be your new favorite superheroes. Thanks again for watching, Super Friends, and we'll see you next year.